He will then, I suppose, try and force it on President Zelensky by saying, if you don't accept this deal, I'll cut off the arms and the economic support. Where does that leave Ukraine, and where does it leave America's reputation as an ally? This was, after all, a blatant Russian invasion of a neighbor, 2.5 years and a great deal of killing on from that. He is now going to try to impose over the heads of the Ukrainian people a settlement on them, which leaves Putin essentially having come out better from this war. That will only guarantee future instability in Europe, greater threats to other parts of Russia's boundaries. I'm thinking of the Baltic states. It would be a very, very bad outcome from a dark 2.5 years.
Now let's speak to Lord Ricketts, Peter Ricketts, former National Security Advisor, of course, on what the impact of Donald Trump's win is going to be around the world. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Is the world a more dangerous place or a safer place, do you think, today?
Certainly a more uncertain place and a more worried place. We've seen how Donald Trump treats America's allies in NATO and in the Pacific. He doesn't think he needs allies. He has a tendency, as you were just discussing, to try to do deals with dictators, a deal with Ukraine over the heads of Zelensky, rewarding Putin for his invasion of Ukraine and all the deaths that have gone on since then, undercutting NATO. So in a world which is now more dangerous than it was when he was president 4 years ago, he is going to operate the same kind of style. And I think it leaves us all in a more uncertain and, yes, dangerous world than before.
In terms of NATO allies and countries that are part of NATO, he just wants them to pay their bills, doesn't he?
Well, he does want them to pay their bills, and he has been putting that pressure on NATO since his first term. NATO spending has been rising. Europeans have been spending more on defense, mainly because of the threat posed by President Putin. So if he wants to take that as a win, he should do so. But NATO, of course, is more than about paying bills. It also requires all allies, including America, to stand by their commitments. And the kind of talk that he had in his first term, that you only get as much security as you pay for, breaks a fundamental compact at the heart of NATO, which is all for one and one for all. So he can still do real damage to NATO, even if he doesn't actually pull the US out of the organization.
What about the things that he says he can fix? We're going to speak to a Ukrainian MP in just a second, but he says he can fix Ukraine in 24 hours. He's optimistic about bringing peace to the Middle East.
Yes, well, we're back to the old boastfulness that we remember from years ago. In Ukraine, I suppose what he's planning to do is reach over the heads of the Ukrainian people who've been doing the fighting and dying and try and reach some deal with President Putin. That can only be a deal that is against Ukraine's interest. He will then, I suppose, try and force it on President Zelensky by saying, if you don't accept this deal, I'll cut off the arms and the economic support. Where does that leave Ukraine, and where does it leave America's reputation as an ally? This was, after all, a blatant Russian invasion of a neighbor, 2.5 years and a great deal of killing on from that. He is now going to try to impose over the heads of the Ukrainian people a settlement on them, which leaves Putin essentially having come out better from this war. That will only guarantee future instability in Europe, greater threats to other parts of Russia's boundaries. I'm thinking of the Baltic states. It would be a very, very bad outcome from a dark 2.5 years.
Do you see any benefits to a Donald Trump presidency when it comes to foreign policy, ending wars, and also just in terms of the way that he speaks directly to world leaders?
Well, I'm struggling, honestly, to come up with any positives. I mean, the most predictable thing about him is his unpredictability, so we can't really know what he would do. I think he has always been against involving America in foreign wars. So although Netanyahu would love to draw him into a war against Iran, attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities and so on, I think Trump will be very, very cautious about that. So I don't think we're going to see any further American adventurism in the world. He will take a very tough line on China, of course, but in his first term, his rhetoric was more fiery than the reality. And in fact, although he did impose tariffs on China, I think US-China trade grew in the time that he was president. So it may turn out that, once again, there's more bluster and bravado than dangerous action.
Right.
But it is very, very uncertain, and it's unsettling and worrying for all allied capitals this morning.
Okay, well, we shall see what happens. Thank you very much for talking to us. That's Lord Ricketts, Peter Ricketts, former National Security Advisor. Let's focus in on Ukraine a bit more now towards the end of the programme with the Ukrainian MP, Oleksiy Goncharenko. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Volodymyr Zelensky has put out his congratulations to Donald Trump on his impressive election victory. Would you like to echo that?
Definitely. It's a clear victory, unprecedented in history, and total victory. It looks like not just White House, not just Senate, but also House of Representatives is taken by Republicans. It's a complete victory. Now, for the next 2 years, before midterms in the United States has just one team who is in charge.
Donald Trump says that he can end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. How do you think he's going to do that?
Yes, he can, I think. But the question is, what is the price and how he sees it? I don't know. I can tell you that from Ukrainian perspective, I think that Donald Trump is definitely higher risks, but also higher possibilities for Ukraine. So Kamala Harris was more predictable. Donald Trump is less predictable. What he will do, how it will end, we don't know for the moment. But from good things, Donald Trump already in his inaugurational speech, victory speech, we should say, said about oil, which is very important. And I want to remind you how he said that he will drill. And this is the main thing for Putin. That's the only source how his war chests still are alive. And if Donald Trump will drop the oil price in the world, that can have a super effect more than anything else on the war in Ukraine and on the Russian regime in general. So it's just one example. I mean, the situation is not black and white. It's not two-dimensional. It's not even three-dimensional. It's many, many dimensions. Also, I think that Donald Trump, who is super winner, especially now after such a victory, he doesn't want to be a loser. He doesn't want to receive his own Afghanistan like Biden received in the beginning of his term. And
Oleksiy, the thing, look, this is a hypothetical situation though, but if, for example, Donald Trump says, there has to be peace, and that means that Ukraine, have got to give up parts of your territory, Donbass or whatever, is that an absolute deal breaker?
First of all, I'm not the one who will make this decision, but what I can tell you, we will never, ever accept that our occupied territories are Russian. This will never happen, no matter who will tell us this. But how we will reclaim these territories, how it will happen, that's the question. And without American support, we should be frank, it will be very hard for us to do it in a military way, at least now.
Yeah. Well, that's a very honest position. Oleksiy, thank you very much for talking to us. That's Oleksiy Goncharenko, Ukrainian MP.